Aloha. Welcome to the Maui Pono Network interviews for the 2024 elections. With me today are my teammates, Bruce Douglas and Ann Picathry, who will be asking questions to our candidate, Rita Ryan, who's running for District 12, State Representative. Rita, welcome. Nice having you here with us.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thanks for having me.
So Rita, it certainly takes a lot of energy and effort to run for office and really putting yourself out there in a significant way. What has motivated you to run for District 12?
Okay. There are a lot of motivating factors. One is my age, and I want to make a difference before I leave the world in some significant way. The other is culminating my years and years of activism and experience with, climate change nonprofits, and also looking at the crisis in government right now. We're at a period of time where we've got this bipolarization, is what I call it, of bipartisanship. And the Green Party has a different way of doing business than the two standard Republican Democrat parties. And I really think we need a little bit of a refresh in government. Not only do we have a two-party system in the United States, we almost have a one-party system in the legislature in Hawaii, with 45 Democrat representatives and 6 Republican representatives, and nothing else, no other flavors. It's time for a little bit of change, and the political landscape is changing. And I want to be part of that movement to step away from the bipartisanship and move into a more sane form of government.
Great, thank you, Rita, for that. And in terms of your qualifications, your civic engagement, what makes you qualified? Because this is a big step to be our state rep.
It is a huge step. It is a huge step. Well, going back real far, I've been a consultant, an IT consultant, systems engineering, software engineering, and I worked in consulting, and I worked for different governments. I worked for contracts with the state of Hawaii and the state of California, and different departments within those different states. And I really saw how government works from the inside operationally. And I saw the effect of the changing of the guard with the new election seasons and what would happen to existing initiatives and the very wasteful spending and the big mistakes that are made in government. And it was always a cause of concern for me, to the point where I didn't want to make a living off of government business anymore, because I felt like I was more part of the problem than part of the solution. And it was very frustrating to me. I have been involved in many different nonprofit organizations over the last 30 years, mostly related to the environment and to the climate crisis that we're facing right now. So I've served in various capacities. I am a climate reality leader with the Climate Reality Project. I was inducted by Al Gore himself. I also started the Climate Reality Project Hawaii chapter, and served as head of that organization for a time. I'm the Maui representative for 350.org, 350hawaii.org. And I work actively in the local government to affect positive change. I spearheaded the initiative to declare a climate emergency here on Maui, which spread to the other counties, which eventually Governor Ige at the time passed into law as a climate emergency, declaring the entire state of Hawaii under climate emergency. Now, that is mostly ceremonial, but it does open up avenues for change. Since we're working under a climate emergency, it opens up money and funding and that sort of thing, both at the county level and at the state level. Now, we all unfortunately saw the effects of climate change in Lahaina. And that definitely was a climate event that we're going to see a lot more of. And I also worked with the Lahaina victims, helping them secure money after the event and other capacities, helping them with basic life things that they needed, clothing and shoes originally, and then helping them with the entertainment fund so that they could get their money every month. And that was, people call it the Oprah and Dwayne Johnson Fund. So I helped people get qualified for that and helped work with them in Lahaina on that. I worked as the Climate Action Advisory Committee, the chair of that group. And that was during the Arakawa administration. And that was Kelly King. And we were a group of all kinds of people, scientists and climate people and environmental people, other people socially active in the community to pass effective legislation at the county level to ensure that we're prepared and resilient in the face of these climate catastrophes. And that was well before the Lahaina catastrophe. I've also worked with several, voting initiatives, the Marriage Equality Act. I could go on. There's so many. I can't remember them all off the top of my head. But for the last 30 years, I've been very active as a simple person, as a regular person, and trying to affect the positive change. But we're sort of stuck in this two-party system where we've got a top-down approach to government. We've got the party boss at the top telling all of the people in their party what they have to do, how they have to vote, or something bad's going to happen. I don't know. They won't get funding next time. The Green Party is a very bottom-up approach. We don't answer to party bosses. We do have tenets, and we do have, our basic values, which includes social equality, grassroots democracy, equality for women, minorities, LGBTQ+. We believe in social justice, environmental justice, and we're looking for solutions and preparation for the climate catastrophes that are to come.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for your civic engagement for all these years, Rita. Just before I hand this over to Ann, could you just go over the different areas that your District 12 covers so that everyone...
Right. It's really interesting. It's quite a big district. It may be the biggest district in Hawaii. I'm not sure. I know that we have the biggest spending cap of all districts for campaign spending. So that makes me think that we may be the biggest district, but it goes all the way from the top of Haleakala, right? Kula, the Hawaiian homelands, all the way down to the Kihei district, just above the Kihei district. There's actually parts of Pu'unene and even Kahului all the way out to the Veterans Highway. Not too many people living there, but, and then it does not include Paia. It includes Haiku, it includes Makawao, it includes, of course, Kula, and all the way on Pi'iholo, this whole area. So basically all of upcountry Maui.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Rita. Ann?
So do you think your history and experience as an environmental activist addressing climate change is why you're so suited to the Green Party? A lot of the values that you share are also shared by the Democratic Party.
Right,
and
right.
And I'd like to see more than one party running. Yeah.
Right.
Do you know if there's any Green Party candidates that have run and won or that are currently in office, I should say? I'm not.
In Hawaii, no, not in Hawaii. We got on the ballot this year. We hadn't been on the ballot officially before. So you will see when you go to vote, there'll be the Democratic Party and very next will be Green Party. So when you go to vote either in the primary or the general election, you will see that the Green Party, and we work to get many voters across the state to sign a petition so that we could be on the ballot. Now, the Green Party really has been around for quite a long time, but in a way, we're just gearing up. We're just gearing up. We feel like this is really the moment with the issues with the bipartisan and unipartisan politics. One thing about the Green Party, and one of the reasons why we haven't maybe been out there or heard from so much, is we do not accept corporate donations at all. So we don't believe that corporations should be in politics. We believe people should be in politics. And we really want to move, we think we have a democracy, but indeed we have a corporatocracy. And we have candidates answering to their corporate donors and not to their constituents. And that's wrong. That's wrong in a democracy. And we set to right that wrong.
I see. So, yeah, and I understand that if you state your party as a Green Party, you can't vote for other candidates, and that's even in a primary.
In a primary.
Yeah, it's like, that's unfortunate, but thank you for running. So can you tell me about with a lot? Oh, does somebody else? Should I move on to have Bruce next, or?
So Bruce, you want to go next?
Neil?
So Rita, and I just want to clarify, because a lot of people don't understand, it's only the primary election. You have to choose a party and only vote for that party, but you're not in the primary election because there's only one Green.
Exactly. There's nobody running against me in the Green Party. So effectively, I've won the primary already.
You run the primary because by
The
default.
general
So you're in the
election.
general and you can vote. There's general election is nonpartisan. So people realize they don't have to vote a party line,
Of course.
yes, on the general election.
And I will not vote the party line in the general election because my vote is valuable. And, I will vote for other candidates that I feel align with my personal views. And there's not Green Party candidates in every race. We only have 3 in Hawaii this year. 2 are for the House and 1 is for the US Senate.
Great. And if you get in and you're in the House, you will be a outcast party. The Democrat Party bosses, won't really let your legislation come through, and you'll be outcasted. You can vote on things, but it'll be very difficult. How are you going to navigate the state swamp?
Well, certainly, I do align with the Democratic Party on many issues, and in that case, I would like to work with people in the House who are proposing specific bills, and work on committees where I think I can have possibly more of an influence. I don't think I will be the black sheep. I think that I will work really close with other lawmakers. I will be a freshman in the House, and I am running against somebody who has 20 years experience in the House, and I'm very aware of that. But I do have leadership abilities. I do work as a CIO, Chief Information Officer for a nonprofit. And I've worked in very high level consulting with up to the governor's level, up to the CEO's level in very large corporations. So I understand how corporations work, and I understand how politics work, and I understand how they work together. So I do have experience there. Now I'm going to have to build coalitions, and the whole idea of a multi-party system is to create coalition governments. So you don't have your choice of A or B, black or white, whatever that is. That's creating a lot of contention in America. today. You've got to either align with this one or that one, and it's getting more and more divided. And I don't like to see that happen. I studied political science my first 2 years in college before I switched to computer science. And what I found really interesting studying in other governments, that we have this two-party system, but other governments, mostly European governments, have multi-party systems. And therefore, two parties have to come together, right, to get legislation passed. Sometimes two parties have to come together to have the president or the premier elected. And when that happens, when you're in coalition governments, more people are represented. We're facing a presidential election today where, half of the people are going to be happy and half of the people are going to be very unhappy. And that causes, already we're hearing so many cries of what's going to happen if we lose, or what's going to happen if we win, and that sort of a thing. And it's ugly. It's very ugly. And I was just watching on TV tonight, it can lead to violence and hatred. Thanksgiving dinners have been ruined all across the nation for the past so many years because families have divided as a result of this bipolar system, is what I call it. And I don't want to be part of that system anymore. I want to be part of a new system, a new way, still grassroots democracy. I believe 100% in democracy, but not the way that we've been playing in these very rigged parties who choose their candidates and the people don't choose the candidates. That's not the way with the Green Party. And it's very refreshing, and it's a healthy approach to government. And again, keeping the corporations out of the politics. That way we know our representatives are working for us, the constituents, not their corporate donors.
Thank you for that. And it's refreshing on the county level that with the Constitutional Convention in the 70s, I think they got rid of partisan politics in the county level.
Right.
And one of my personal things, I'd love to see that happen on the state level as well, where it's just real people running against real people and not party bosses calling the shots.
Exactly. And you're really representing your constituency. You're really representing the needs of the people, and you don't have to worry, am I going to get that funding from Corporation X next year if I vote this way? You should only answer to the people you represent, not to the corporations that fund your campaign. So the Green Party thinks that there should be public funding for campaigns. And I think there's something on your taxes says you want to donate $1 to the American presidential campaign or something like that. The government should fund their own campaigns, if you know what I mean, rather than having corporations do that. That's where the ugliness comes. Corporations are not people. Only people are people, and only people should affect democracy.
Thank you. And with that, I'll pass it to Paul.
So Rita, you're running against Kyle Yamashita, who
Yes.
has been in office, as you said, for a long time.
Yes.
He is part of the Democratic Party, but I guess there's a distinction that some people look at between corporate Democrats and regular Democrats.
Right.
And so if you were to look at the legislation that Kyle has supported over the past couple of years, what would you oppose, and why do you feel that some of his decisions were not representing the people, but perhaps the corporate interests that you keep on talking about?
Right. Well, I looked who his corporate funders were. One was Turo, which is a car rental business, where people rent their cars out, sort of like the Airbnb of cars, and there was a few other corporate donors in there. And I do believe that candidates are influenced by their corporate donors. I have nothing bad to say about Kyle Yamashita. I'm not going to go after him on his record and his corporate donors. I'm going to stick to what I want to do, what I think is Pono, what I want to do right, and not get into ugly politics of what I don't like that he did. However, he was not particularly aligned with voters, upcountry voters, who wanted the legalization of marijuana in the state. In upcountry, we're agricultural, right? And we're looking for ways, we're always looking for ways to promote our agricultural goods, to keep our farmers in business, to keep our farmers running. The cost of land is prohibitively expensive. So you buy that tomato, that upcountry tomato, and it just costs a lot more to make than it does in Brazil or Mexico, where a lot of the store-bought tomatoes come from. So we've got an issue because we want to be sustainable. We want to have food security. We want to have economic security. And the legalization of marijuana could really help the farmers, help farmers who are farming that product now become legitimate, pay their taxes, be part of the system rather than, hiding and being in the shadows. And he didn't agree with that. And a lot of the voter, the upcountry people were very unhappy with his position on that. That was one of the things that made me think maybe I should really do this at my ripe old age and run for office, because there is not a whole lot of connection sometimes between the constituents and Kyle Yamashita. I think that he would argue that. But, of course, there's pro and cons to that argument. But really being on the ground with the people and how we live up country and what we do and what we need to do to stay resilient, to become resilient, to be economically a little more self-sufficient with agriculture, and to really look after the people up country rather than the state as a whole and the implications of the state. And it ties into everything. It ties into crime reform and, the justice system and how many people are, jailed for, most of, one of the biggest entries into the prison system is marijuana violations, right? And we know what happens once people get caught up in that system. And think of all of the money the government is paying for these offenders, these nonviolent offenders, right? To get through the court system, the penal system, the jail system, freeing that money up and having that system pay taxes into the government it's a huge win-win. So that's something I'm fairly passionate about. We're the Green Party, not necessarily because of that subject, but we do advocate for marijuana decriminalization.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rita. Ann, you're next. And Ann, if you can just come a little bit closer to your mic. It was it was a little difficult to hear you before.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask you, Rita, we're 9 months into the post Maui Lahaina wildfires, and it's still acute emergency of housing, right? And so if you were in office as a state house rep, what would you have done that would be different than what has been done so far? Like in some of the things have been building temporary homes, trying to get long-term rentals converted to short-term rentals, and
right.
And I do know you have some experience because you said you served in recovery efforts after the fire. So can you share that with us?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that, Anne. I think one of the biggest failures that we had in recovery to Lahaina was the lack of preparation. Okay. We've been singing the climate song since the 70s, really. And we do have a committee in the House, that a disaster preparedness committee, and we weren't prepared. I'd love to get on that committee, if and when I win. We weren't prepared. We knew what was coming. There was a report that we, the Maui taxpayers, paid for that outlined almost exactly what was going to happen in the perfect storm of drought, wind, and fire. And they used Lahaina as an example as a particularly vulnerable area, yet no one was prepared. The fire department wasn't prepared. The police were not prepared. The cell phone company wasn't prepared. HECO wasn't prepared. The county, the disaster response chief wasn't prepared. So we're still not prepared, right? And I know that we're really focusing on after the fact, but we really got to focus on the resilience planning, because it's not going to end. Lahaina is, a taste of what's to come in the future. And that could come with hurricanes, that could come with sea level rise and monster storms. It could come with complete and total drought on this island. It can come in the way of fire. It can come in the way of loss of food security. Not that we have much, but we have a little bit of food security. It can come in just an economic collapse of systems, because it's worldwide. And we saw the supply chain collapse during COVID, another disaster we were not prepared for. We didn't have a plan for. I haven't seen any evidence that we have a plan for the next, big outbreak of something. Are we going to learn our lessons of the past? Are we going to repeat them? These are things that we really have to look at and be more prepared than we were. And I look at the legislature that Hawaii is not prepared. It could hit any island, any town, anytime. And we need to be concerned. Now, there is a lot of effort going into being more prepared and creating resiliency hubs that I haven't seen hide nor hair of yet. But I think preparation is something that we absolutely could have mitigated a lot of the suffering in Lahaina had we been more prepared and looked at those warnings and taken them seriously. So I think that the House needs to pass more legislation on preparedness, and not just disaster preparedness as one big, huge bucket, but whether that's a pandemic, hurricane, a food security disaster, drought, whatever it is, and really look at these things, because they're happening and they're going to continue to happen. And there's going to be more and more of these, and we can't deny it. And we have to be proactive and not reactive. And so I think that's where we really failed Lahaina.
Right. Yeah, there was certainly evidence of that. But as far as the housing, what
Yes.
happened afterwards? And like I said, we're 9 months into it. Were you satisfied with like what FEMA did, what the governor, what the state house has done, or Senate, providing getting homes built? I mean, we know there was something about estimated 10 years for housing, permanent housing to happen. 9 to 10 years, right?
And
So-
that is not okay. This is not the first time a fire disaster has ever hit a community and displaced a large number of people as homeless. I mean, it happens in California every year. What we need to do is we need to look at the successes. My daughter lost her home in the Woolsey fire in California, and barely made it out with her life. No warning, nothing on her phone. Nobody came down the street blaring the sirens. Very, very similar. She just had to get the animals in the car and run. And and I've had fires surrounding my home before, so I know how real it is and what a reality it is. And if her house was rebuilt in 2 years, right? And so we have to look at, well, why can't we do the same thing? What are we doing different than these communities that have successfully rebuilt? And why are we trying to reinvent the wheel? You know, that there's a lot of temporary housing. Yes. There's the governor is limiting the short-term housing. I don't think it should be incumbent on homeowners to bear the brunt of the fire any more than it should be incumbent on hotel owners to bear the brunt, you know. So there's some injustices there, some imbalances there, certainly. And in a way, this is actually making housing prices go up. It's hurting the housing market because the amount of money that the government is willing to pay. I have an ohana on my property. I have not displaced the person in the ohana. She's going to stay there as long as she wants to. But a lot of people are throwing their tenants out because it's more lucrative to get paid by the state a heck of a lot more money than they're making now. And so now we haven't really improved this situation by throwing one person out or one family out and letting one family in, right? So that's not a big solution. Maui's a little slow with their permit planning. Again, it's lack of preparation in housing. You know, we should have been prepared for this, for displacement of a huge population. 6,000 people. It's not even. We've got 165,000 residents. So if you look at it, it's not a huge percentage of the people on Maui. Yet here we are, 9 months later, and some people are still homeless. Some people haven't found temporary housing. And the saddest thing is so many victims have just left the island. And so we've lost our workforce, right? And they've just given up and gone other places where they can find housing. So, yeah, I don't think that we've been responsive enough. And I think that there are alternatives that should be considered. But again, the hotel association, the hospitality people hold a lot of power over the politicians, right? And dictated that the onus should be on the homeowners over the hotels to house people displaced from the fire. I could get into specifics. I don't want to bore you to death about you know, temporary housing and things that we can do. I did work with the Climate Action and Advisory Committee to try to bring a company in to Maui, and we asked the county for land, if we could lease some land so they could put up their factory. And this was literally a year or two before the fire, so they can build these very green pre-built structures, giving all the jobs to the people of Maui. And they would basically, it's an assembly line of building green housing here on Maui. And it was very green housing, greener than our planning guides are, you know, all with solar capacity, not just solar hot water, but full solar capacity using, you know, zero carbon footprint homes, net zero homes. And we need to revisit that, because if we have facilities like that building green homes, and we can just ramp up the production and build not just temporary homes, not little box homes in Kahului, but really building real homes for the people of Kahului. And I know that there was a lot of, and I was very involved with the cleanup and my opinions along with environmentalists across the state about what to do with the Lahaina remains and how long it took the Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA. And they kind of have their cookie cutter approach that they went by, but where to put those remains, I call them the Lahaina remains, because it's not just burnt out buildings and structures and homes, it's people in those remains. And so I was involved in being very active. Of course, I didn't get 100% what I wanted, but my first appeal was to keep the Lahaina remains on Maui. And because where FEMA wanted to dump them was in landfills on the mainland that were adjacent to Native American Indian reservations. And they were gonna, a lot of chemicals, they weren't gonna clean it, they were just gonna dump it, and they were gonna spread it out. And we saw what happened with, 9/11 New York, and, they dumped it all on Staten Island, and those people are getting very, very sick now. And the government's saying, no, you're not sick, you're fine. So I was really concerned about, the not in my backyard approach. I did talk to the mayor about that. And I think I got a little bit of traction going on, let's keep the Lahaina remains on Maui. So I got that far.
So thank you. Yeah, so thank you for that, Rita. And certainly there's been a lot of involvement and participation. We have one more question, and that'll be with
Sure.
that Bruce will ask that last question. Bruce?
Yes, Rita, the sign of a real statesperson isn't just what you vote on while you're sitting in office, but
Right.
what bills you champion, you write up, you draw, you make happen and bring to the forefront and get
Right.
people to sign for. If you had 3 bills during your tenure at the State House that you'd like to bring forward and champion, what would those be?
I think the first one would be surrounding corporate donations. Let's improve our democracy and not allow it to recede into a corporatocracy. So the disallowing in the state of Hawaii corporate donations and making the campaigns funded entirely by the state and donors, individual donors, but no corporate donations. That would be very, very important. The next one I think would be, getting behind, how we choose our electors and the electoral system, and the making sure that every vote is a vote, and there's like a ranked choice voting. I don't know if you've heard of that, but basically you go to vote and you choose the person you like the best, and then second best and third best, right? And then when it goes, if somebody, in the first level gets a majority, meaning over 50%, of course they win the election. But let's say there's 3 people and one gets 32%, one gets 33%, and one gets 34%. Well, giving it to the person with 34% is not making most of the voters happy, right? It's making 34% of the voters happy. So it's a little complicated to explain, but basically what happens in that case is that then they look at those 3 candidates and how many were the second choice, and count those votes until somebody gets a majority. Then it kind of goes on and on until somebody gets a majority. I think that's a much fairer way of voting, and it eliminates ugly runoff elections, which we've seen everywhere. So if we can start implementing that at a state level, hopefully it'll catch fire on a national level, and we'll have fairer elections where the person in office really, really represents the will of the people, not the will of the Electoral College. That sort of, we saw the debacle in the last election. So we want to avoid that. And let's see, that's 2. I get 3? I get 3. Okay. Wow, there's so many that I would like to address, and there's so many pressing issues, but it's really hard. But we have a healthcare crisis on the island, and this is near and dear to me because my husband's been going through cancer, and we have to go to Oahu to get the healthcare we need, and we never thought this would happen, but it did. And there were some changes in, you know, the system, the healthcare system, that caused, and how doctors bill insurance, that caused a lot of doctors to leave Maui. And so now we have a huge deficit of doctors. As a result, we have a very overworked staff of medical professionals here on the island, and they're burning out left and right. We saw during COVID what happened. My neighbor was a nurse in the ICU during that, and we lost nurses. We lost the essential frontline healthcare workers that we need. So we need to change the system so that doctors can compete here in Maui and get paid what they can get paid in other states, in order to, or here in Hawaii. I think Oahu doesn't have as big of a problem, although they do have a lot of backlog, but they've got major hospitals and an institution, you know, a school, a medical school. So, but the outer islands, we all have to suffer, and only the privileged can get on a plane and go to Oahu every time something happens, you know. And luckily, we've been able to rearrange our finances and make that happen. Thank God we've got health care. My husband was a union worker his whole life, and we have health care. He's retired now, but I'm still covered the rest of my life. So that something nice to say for unions. Nurses are really suffering now with the amount of overtime, the care. You know, if you've got a nurse who's been on her 16th hour, you're not going to get the care that you need, you know. And as a result, you know, we're not getting the care we need. We're losing lives. We lost lives during COVID because we had a shortage of health professionals. So I think I would get around the crisis. Unfortunately, because we're an island state, Oahu and what goes on at the state level, we're sort of blind to it on the outside islands. Like what goes on over there in that bubble, you know? And we're not part of it because we can't go and we can't rally there, and we can't go and meet with everybody unless, you know, we can get on a plane and do it. So we're very separated. Yet the decisions made at the state level impact our lives, our everyday lives, you know, the quality of our healthcare, the quality of our lives, you know, the length of our lives, you know. So we need to clean that up. And I'd like to propose legislation to do just that, to create impetus for doctors to come back to Maui, or doctors leaving medical school to come to Maui and work here on Maui, so we can there'll be a just distribution of healthcare across the state.
Great. Thank you for that, Rita. And I know Ann could really relate that to being a former nurse.
I was a nurse for
and-
like 40 years, and I did
and-
those 12-hour shifts before I started teaching at the college.
So Rita, thank you so much. Rita Ryan is running for District 12, and she's running for the Green Party. She's not going to be part of the primary, but the general election, you'll see Rita's name there under the Green Party. And again, she's offering a different solution than the Democratic process that we're in right now, with the more corporate Democrats that are really running the show in Oahu right now. So again, thank you, Rita, for running, for taking that time and energy to do that. Stay tuned to us. We'll be continuing to put out interviews with the Maui Pono Network as we go and interview more candidates for this 2024 elections, that the finals will be happening, the general election in November. So stay tuned. Become an informed voter. That's what we really want, and that's what the Maui Pono Network is truly about. Thank you for watching.
Thank
Aloha.
you, Rita.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you,
Rita.
Ann. Thank you, Bruce, for affording me the time today. Aloha. Bless you all.
Aloha.
Aloha.